You know what nobody really tells you about marriage? They dress it up like this fairy tale vow of for better or worse, like it's some magical promise carved in stone. But no one ever explains what happens when worse barges into your home and refuses to leave. I'm Brooklyn, 32 years old, and until last year I was convinced I had the whole wife and mother role mastered. My husband, Mitchell, had a cushy job in tech making great money, seriously good money. I stayed home raising our 3 kids, living what I thought was the dream. Back in high school, Mitchell was this driven guy always talking about providing for his future family. And it wasn't just talk. He delivered on every word. After college, he scored a position at a financial software firm, bringing in more than my parents ever earned in their lives. Not long after I landed my first real job, I got pregnant with Carson, and it just made sense for me to stay home. His income already dwarfed mine, and truthfully, I wasn't exactly devastated to walk away from the career track so early. Carson came first, then Iris 2 years later, and Owen 3 years after that. Mitchell never once complained about being the breadwinner. If anything, he thrived on it. He'd get home from work and immediately dive into homework help, games, and bedtime routines, the kind of hands-on dad stuff my friends wished their husbands did. Sometimes I'd tease that he was making me look bad, but honestly, I adored that he cared so deeply about his family. Our intimacy was amazing, arguments were rare, and our biggest dilemmas were usually about which vacation to book. I always said I'd return to work once Owen started school. But then Mitchell got promoted to senior level, and suddenly life got even easier. Riding lessons for Iris, travel baseball for Carson, a housekeeper twice a week so I never had to scrub a toilet. Why go back to some entry-level job when I was already living this good? Mitchell loved being able to provide, too. He'd tell me how proud he was that he could give us the life he dreamed of when we were broke students eating ramen. Looking back, I realize he was probably pushing himself to the limit to keep it all going. At the time, I just thought this was normal. The kids worshipped him, probably because he spoiled them with everything they wanted. New gear for Carson, designer clothes for Iris, the latest toy for Owen. Sometimes I wondered if we were overindulging them, but Mitchell would just shrug and say, "What's the point of working this hard if we can't enjoy it?" And honestly, I agreed. We were happy, comfortable, solid. I thought we were untouchable. Then last December flipped everything upside down. Mitchell walked into the kitchen one night looking like he'd been hit by a train. For a second, I thought he'd lost a family member or gotten bad medical news. That's how shaken he looked. When he finally got the words out, that his company was restructuring and his position was being cut, I couldn't even process it. Gone. Just like that. They offered him a role in another department, but it came with a nearly 40% pay cut. 40%. Do you have any idea what slicing 40% out of our lifestyle means? Iris's lessons, Carson's baseball, vacations, the housekeeper, one of the car payments, maybe even part of the mortgage. I tried to be supportive. I really did. I said all the right things about figuring it out together and trusting he'd land something better. But inside, I was terrified. The first thing to go was my car lease. Mitchell kept his because he needed it for work, but mine was outrageous and impossible now. So suddenly I was driving this beat-up Honda his mom had given us years ago. Every time I parked somewhere, I swore people were staring, judging. Then came breaking the news to the kids about their activities. Iris melted down over horseback riding, hours of screaming and sobbing like we'd told her someone died. Carson kept calm, but the anger was all over his face. And Mitchell, it was like watching him collapse in slow motion. My confident, capable husband shrank into someone who apologized constantly, walking around defeated. He kept saying it was temporary, that something better would come soon. But weeks kept dragging by with nothing. Meanwhile, I was stuck juggling 3 miserable kids, dodging questions from friends about why we couldn't keep up appearances, and watching everything we built crumble while his job searches went nowhere. And the longer it went on, the more he grated on me. The way he slumped over his laptop, the desperate look he got every time the phone buzzed, the fake optimism that fooled no one. And if I'm being brutally honest, I started resenting him. Not for losing the job at first. That wasn't his fault. Happens in corporate America. But for not fixing it fast enough. For not having some sort of backup plan. for letting us get so completely tied to one paycheck that the whole family fell apart the second something went wrong. And honestly, I started wondering if this defeated, apologetic version of Mitchell was the real him all along, not the ambitious provider I thought I'd married. It wasn't like I just woke up one morning and decided to be a underscore to my husband. It crept in slowly, the way you don't notice you're freezing until you're already shivering. At first, I still did the wife things, packing his lunches, keeping the house spotless, all of it. But then one morning, I just didn't want to make his sandwich anymore. He was an adult, he could handle it. When he asked about it later, I said I wasn't in the mood, and instead of getting annoyed, the pathetic look on his face made me angrier. Next, I quit giving him goodbye kisses before work. What was the point? He was heading to a job that barely paid more than I could probably earn at some retail store. And he was just grateful to even have it. Where was the guy who used to talk about climbing ladders and building something great? This version of Mitchell seemed willing to take whatever scraps they handed him. And honestly, it turned me off. The kids noticed before he did. Carson asked why I was being weird with Dad, and Iris straight up told me I was being mean. But I felt like I was the only one in this house facing reality. Mitchell was walking around pretending everything would just work itself out. The kids were clinging to the old lifestyle, and I was the only one who understood how completely underscore we really were. When Owen asked why we couldn't go to that big indoor water park like we'd promised, Mitchell just smiled and said, "Maybe next year, buddy." Like that was supposed to fix it. After that, I stopped initiating any intimacy. If he wanted affection, he could earn it by actually fixing things. I wasn't about to fake being attracted to a man who couldn't hold our life together. And he didn't even fight me on it. He'd reach for me in bed or try to kiss me, and when I turned away, he'd just roll over quietly. Even that pissed me off, like, show some fight, prove you still care. Instead, the only conversations we had were about money and his job hunt. He'd tell me about interviews that led nowhere, applications that vanished, networking that didn't pan out, and all I could think was, try harder. Other men were making things happen. My friend Sarah's husband started his own business after being laid off, and within 6 months he was earning more than before. But Mitchell just seemed broken. And let me tell you, defeat is not attractive. I didn't marry someone who'd roll over and accept whatever life threw at him. I married someone who was supposed to handle it. The breaking point came on his birthday. I forgot. Not because I wanted to hurt him, but because I had too much underscore on my mind trying to keep things afloat. By the time he mentioned it that morning, it was too late to fix. And honestly, what was I supposed to do? Blow money we didn't have on a gift for a man who couldn't even provide? The kids forgot too, which only made my point. This family was falling apart. That night, Mitchell quietly asked if anyone remembered the date. He looked so sad. And instead of feeling sorry, I was irritated. Like, read the room. We were drowning financially, the kids were miserable, and he wanted a celebration? Celebrate what? His failure? When he started crying, real tears, I snapped. I told him I'd be a loving wife again when he became the man I married. When we had the nice car back, when Iris could ride horses again, when money stopped being this constant stress. I told him I wasn't going to fake being happy just to make him feel better about letting us down. The look on his face was like watching something inside him break. But instead of softening me, it made me push harder. I told him being married to someone who couldn't provide was exhausting. That watching him mope around instead of making changes was pathetic. That if he'd worked harder or had a plan, none of this would have happened. He stared at me for what felt like forever. And then he said it. He wanted a divorce. No fight, no begging, no let's work this out. Just cold, final words. He packed a bag that night, said lawyers would handle custody, and walked out. I kept expecting him to stop, to turn it into a normal fight, to come back later. But he didn't. He left. And just like that, I was a single mom of 3, stuck in a house I can't afford, splitting time with my kids, and drowning in legal bills. And somehow, I'm supposed to feel guilty about it. Mitchell's been staying at his cousin's place across town, and according to the kids, he seems perfectly fine. Better than fine, actually. Iris mentioned that his apartment is surprisingly nice and that he even cooks real meals for them instead of ordering takeout. Cooking. Like that's some life skill worthy of applause. The divorce papers showed up last week, and they were more generous than I expected. He's not fighting me for the house or for custody. The kids stay with me during the week, then go to him every other weekend and Wednesday nights. He even agreed to keep paying the mortgage until we figure out something more permanent. But here's the part that makes me furious. He got a new job. A better job. Making even more than before. Apparently, he'd been interviewing for months but didn't say anything in case it fell through. So while I was stuck holding the family together, panicking over bills, he was already planning his escape. The kids came home raving about how happy he seemed, how he'd been working out, how he bought a brand new wardrobe. Carson said Dad even told them he was excited about the future again. Meanwhile, I'm over here learning the hard way what being a single parent really means. Without Mitchell handling the finances, I've realized just how much everything costs. Without him to tag in, I've learned exactly how much work raising 3 kids actually is. Mitchell used to handle Owen's marathon bedtime routine. No. That little underscore fights me every night, brushing teeth, picking up toys, going to bed. I've started looking at jobs, but after a decade out of the workforce, the options are bleak. Anything I'm qualified for barely covers childcare. And the jobs that pay enough all want experience I don't have. I hate that it's come to this. I never pictured myself as a divorced mom scrambling just to keep the lights on. 4 months after the divorce, Mitchell looks like a brand new man. When he came to pick up the kids last Friday, I barely recognized him. He's fit, he dresses sharp, he carries himself with an energy I haven't seen in years. The kids gush about his apartment, his new job, all the fun they have with him. And then Carson let it slip that Mitchell's seeing someone new. Nothing serious, apparently, but still, some divorced woman from his company with kids of her own. And, of course, my kids actually like her. Owen said she taught him to make pancakes from scratch. Iris mentioned her daughter rides horses competitively. Of course she does. But here's what really eats at me. I'm not the villain here. Everyone acts like I'm some monster wife who didn't stand by her man during hard times. But where was my support? I gave 14 years of my life to raising kids and building a home while he got to have a career, an identity, a world outside these walls. The minute things got tough, I was supposed to smile and pretend everything was fine. I was supposed to fake being attracted to a man who couldn't provide anymore. His family, our friends, even my kids sometimes act like I should have stuck it out. But no one mentions how he gave up on the marriage the moment I stopped playing the role of grateful, supportive wife. He didn't fight for me. He didn't try to understand where I was coming from. He just decided it was easier to start fresh with someone who expected less. I work now at a medical office downtown answering phones and scheduling appointments. The pay is enough to cover the basics, but it's nowhere near the life I thought I'd have. The kids are adjusting, but it's obvious they prefer time with their dad. He gets to be the fun parent. No bills, no stress, no bitter ex-wife, just adventures and happy weekends. Meanwhile, I'm the one stuck managing homework, grocery shopping with coupons, and explaining why we can't afford the things they used to take for granted. Carson asked me last week why I stopped being nice to Dad. And what was I supposed to say? That sometimes love isn't enough? That I married a man expecting him to be strong enough for whatever life threw at us, and when he wasn't, everything else fell apart? So, yes, I stopped loving my husband when he stopped being the man I married. And now he's out there thriving, with his shiny new life and his better job, while I'm stuck here sorting through the aftermath. But I'm not apologizing. Not for having standards. Not for expecting my partner to carry his weight. And I'm damn sure not apologizing for saying out loud what I needed in order to feel secure in my marriage. Mitchell walked away and somehow became the good guy in everyone else's version of this story. But I'm the one left with the consequences of his failure to provide. And nobody seems to give a __ about that part.